So one thing that pops up for me, I see it in artists, but we see it across all people, is they think they're talking to like other artists or other whoever it is that they are, and they're attracting people who do what they do instead of attracting the people who want what they do. And that is definitely a key difference. They're focused way too much on their own why and not the why of their customer.
Welcome to the Agents of Change, the podcast experience you've been waiting for your entire marketing career. Search, social, mobile, AI, blockchain, and neuromarketing. These are the Agents of Change, and so are you. Digital marketing success awaits, and your transformation begins now.
Welcome to another episode of the Agents of Change podcast. My name is Rich Brooks, and I am your host. This is the podcast for everybody who's looking to understand how to reach and engage more of their ideal customers online. We're up to episode 579, powered by Flight New Media. Because let's face it, running a business is a lot, and you don't have to go it alone. Whether you need help with SEO, paid ads, branding, or building a website that actually works, my team here at Flight has your back. We've been helping small businesses just like yours grow since the late 1990s. Just head on over to takeflight.com, that's takeflyte.com, or the Agents of Change website, or just reach out to me on LinkedIn and I'll get right back in touch with you. Today we're talking about a favorite topic of mine, how to stand out online or off, or as I often say, how to be remarkable. As more and more brands and marketers turn to AI for creating content at scale, now it's more important than ever to be your authentic self and attract the right type of clients to your business. So let's figure out how to do just that. My next guest is a business coach, speaker, and the founder of The Inspiration Place, where she helps artists and creative entrepreneurs build profitable businesses. She's the author of Artpreneur, a best-selling book with over 400 reviews on Amazon and a 4.7-star rating, proving its impact on artists and entrepreneurs worldwide. As the host of the Inspiration Place podcast, ranked, by the way, not in the top 5%, not in the top 1%, but in the top 0.5% of all podcasts globally, her insights have reached thousands of creatives looking to turn their passion into sustainable income. Her podcast was recently featured in the debut issue of Igniting Creativity magazine, and her expertise has been highlighted in Forbes, the New York Times, Art Journaling magazine, and many, many more. She knows firsthand how to monetize creativity and scale an online business. She's generated over $2 million from her coaching programs and has helped countless artists break into six-figure earnings. Her expertise in email marketing, personal branding, and high-ticket sales makes her a sought-after voice for business owners who want to attract their ideal audience and sell with confidence. It almost sounds like the intro to this podcast. In today's digital landscape, standing out is harder than ever, but she teaches creatives and entrepreneurs how to sell without feeling salesy, grow an engaged audience beyond social media, and leverage podcast appearances and PR to boost credibility and sales. In fact, she's doing that right now. So let's discover how you can stand out with Miriam Schulman. Miriam, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Rich, and thank you for reading that entire introduction I wrote for you.
No problem. And I do have
little improv put in, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I always have to make it a little bit my own. So I'm excited about this conversation because, I think you and I have talked about the fact that I've talked about the remarkability formula and how to stand out online has always been important. I think it's more important than ever. So let's start with the pain point. You say a lot of people struggle to stand out in a noisy, AI-saturated world. What are some of the biggest mistakes that you see artists and entrepreneurs, and going forward, I'm just going to call them entrepreneurs because all artists are entrepreneurs in my mind.
Correct.
What are the mistakes they're making with their general messaging and maybe specifically about their about page?
Yeah. So one thing that pops up for me, I see it in artists, but we see it across all people, is they think they're talking to like other artists or other whoever it is that they are, and they're attracting people who do what they do instead of attracting the people who want what they do. That is definitely a key difference. They're focused way too much on their own why and not the why of their customer.
And I've definitely seen that certainly outside the artist world as well. But can you give me some examples that maybe you've seen out there where artists are talking to other artists when they should be talking to art buyers?
Yeah. So I want to just circle back a little bit, just talking about the framework that I like to use when I'm helping people with their about page. And this is looking at the who, what, and why, but you have to think of yourself and that of your customers having two sides. So your two sides are your creative side that cares about what and how. And too many entrepreneurs focus on their what and their how. Oh, it has 5 modules, and really there is the who and the why. But the mistake that I see is that people are focused on the who and why of themselves. Now, the customer also has the what and the how and the who and the why. So whenever you're writing any copy, whether that's a post on social media, whether that's your about page, anytime you're talking, you have to think about what is their who am I talking to, and what is their why. So to give like a more concrete example that is a little outside of the art world, if I was somebody who started a bakery, you can't be talking about, well, I was really stressed out during the pandemic, so I started baking and that really relaxed me. And that's why I founded Eddie's Edibles or whatever, because your customer does not care how much baking relaxes you. They want to know it's the big thing. What's in it for me? And I see this over and over and over again across every industry when I look at about pages, bios, everything is they're so focused on that Simon Sinek why, but not their customers' why.
Right. And I don't think you're suggesting that we shouldn't share our why at some point throughout the process. But what you're saying is people come, they have a short attention span, and we immediately have to talk to their pain points and explain to them why our bakery or digital agency or our art is going to change their lives, improve their lives in some way, shape, or form. Is
Well,
that correct?
sometimes your why does overlap with their why.
Mm-hmm.
That's when it's really important. So if I was a baker who saw that there wasn't enough inclusive wedding toppers because
Sure.
I had that experience, I'm not saying I, Miriam, had that experience, but I, as pretend baker, had that experience. There wasn't something that represented me. And that was important behind founding this company. Then your why does overlap with your customer's why. So that's when it's very important to tell that story, but it has to matter to your customer. That's my point. And I see too many people, they go off into tangents about like, well, I was so burnt out from corporate. It's like, you know what? Nobody cares. So
Right.
you care. But unless you're a coach, if you're a business coach, like for me, I'll talk about my story, how I was in corporate and I left that to become an artist. And that's interesting to my clients because many of them do have day jobs and they fantasize about leaving that and becoming a full-time artist. So that's why that story now is relevant to who I'm helping.
Makes a lot of sense. So you developed something called the Creativity Fix. And can you kind of break it down? What does it do? And how does it help us stand out in a world where everybody's copy is starting to sound more and more alike?
Yeah. So you can do this with or without AI. And I just want to circle back to my book, Artpreneur. I do have a chapter called Embrace the Inner Weirdo, which really helps you unpack what makes you special and different. Because, Rich, I don't have to tell you, AI is great, but it's like you put bad stuff in, you're not going to get good stuff out. So you really have to train that robot to understand what makes you different. So again, this is with or without AI, anything I'm going to be talking about. So you really have to understand what are your quirks, amplify those quirks, and using the kind of language that nobody else is going to use. What makes you the most interesting baker that they can find on the internet? We talked about one thing, but it could be many number of things. What makes you the most interesting digital marketer? What makes you the most interesting web designer? What makes you the most whatever it is? And if you're just asking AI to help you without a deeper understanding of that, you're going to get back generic, soulless copy. So the more you can dig into that, what makes you tick as a person? What makes you tick as an artist? What are your values? And not being afraid of alienating people along the way, because there's just no money in the middle, which unfortunately,
I love
that's
that.
been
There's no money
proven.
in the middle. And it makes a lot of sense. So it sounds like whether or not we're going to use AI for any of this sort of content creation or ideation is we need to kind of ask ourselves some questions before we even get started to basically, I forget the exact phrase you use, but embrace this inner weirdo that we
Yes.
hopefully have all inside of us in our own individual ones. What is the process? Like, I'm guessing that this is some of the work that you do with clients, plus it's probably in your books, but can you talk me through if I'm literally confused and I'm like, I know I want to stand out. I feel like I'm different and I've got something different to offer the world, but I'm not exactly sure how to communicate that. What are some of the steps that we can take to kind of crystallize those ideas?
Okay. So one of the prompts that or messaging exercises I put all my clients through is understanding why people want what you have. And usually it's different than you think, but also to throw in some things that it's kind of like using the who, what, why formula. And you can, again, absolutely use AI to do this. But again, you really have to be explicit when you're asking, not just why does somebody want a cookie, but why does somebody want a cookie who shares these values? And to use values that you think has nothing to do with baking cookies. So, for example, I helped an artist who is an abstract landscape painter, and I was asking her about her values, and she's saying that she really believes in women empowerment. Now, she's an abstract landscape artist, so it's not like she's painting activist art. But when she started putting in her values and explaining what her values were, and we did use AI for this, then AI was able to help us come up with language such as a woman needs her sanctuary. So you can unpack some very powerful messages using AI when you put in your values. So the two things that I like to do just to give, and I'm not going to give the exact prompts, not because I don't want to share it, but just because I didn't prepare to have that with me right now. You don't even need it. If you just talk to your robot and just say, hey, these are my values, and say, what is it that you value most in the world? And then the second prompt to give it is, what are the things that you're most unhappy with? So with that one, the prompt, it sounds like this. What are some time sensitive reasons people want your service or product? And then say, especially given the fact, and then go on a rant about things that you don't like about the world. Don't worry about how what you're ranting about has to connect with your cookie baking business. AI will figure that out for you, and it'll come up with some really interesting messages that kind of act as dog whistles to pull in those ideal clients.
And we often talk about the fact that, like, it's not just about attracting your ideal clients. Some of that work is pushing away the bad clients, the bad fits. It's not, there's no bad dogs, there's no bad clients, but there are clients that are not a good fit for you, who will never appreciate your work, your approach, whatever you deliver. So being as authentic and true as you possibly can will push people away who would have just wasted your time and you would have wasted theirs. So I think that's absolutely an important part of all this. So you don't need to use AI from what I'm hearing, but
That's
it
correct.
is a tool, and it can certainly make some leaps of logic that you might not come up on your own, and discover something in abstract landscaping that can tie into feminism or whatever the case may be. So that makes a lot of sense. Once you've kind of gone through some of these exercises, like, what are the next steps? Like, okay, so I've got a tagline, or I've got some mission statements or some language from my About Us page. Like, how do we proceed from there to continue communicating our remarkability to the rest of the world?
Okay. So once you have all of those statements, and whether you've done this as a brainstorming session with your own genius mind, or you've used your, I call my chat GPT Hal, by the way. Do you have names for your robots?
I do not. Usually I just call it Claude or Chat, but I'm going to look into it. Obviously, I won't steal Hal. I might go with Herbie, who was the fill-in robot for the Fantastic Four when the artist couldn't draw the Human Torch. But I digress into my nerds, so you
Okay.
please go ahead.
All right. Well, I call ChatGPT Hal in case
Hal,
I forget and start referring to him as Hal. And my Fathom, like I see yours is Rich's Fathom note taker. Mine is Megan, M3GAN. Just telling you. Okay. So,
Yeah.
all right. So Hal. So once you've done the brainstorming session with Hal, if you're doing this in AI, now you can put in your bio and ask it to help you write it. But there's certain things that I'm going to caution all our listeners to avoid. Rich, you may have gone over this, but this is a great time for us to reinforce. There's some bad habits that are almost impossible to train Hal away from. And one of them is hesitant language. Have you come across that yourself?
Well, let's talk about that a little.
Okay, so first of all, let me just explain what hesitant language is. So that is if your about page is filled with things like I believe that, I strive to, I aim to, I hope to. And no matter what prompt you give it, even if you give it the prompt, do not use hesitant language. It will still use it. And the reason why is because of the guardrails. It is not 100% sure how you really feel. So it will put all those words in on purpose. So whatever you get back from ChatGPT, from Hal, from Claude, actually, I haven't compared to see if Claude is better at this than Hal is. I'm just going to assume that these LLMs all going to work similarly the way we are right now in April 2025, but they all seem to have this hesitant language in it. So it's your job to edit it out, whether you're doing a social media post, a blog post, podcast script, or an about page, is get rid of hesitant language. It's going to be so much stronger if you say things, every woman needs a sanctuary rather than I believe that, or
Right.
my art is, or my website design is, rather than I strive to make good website design. It's like, well, let us know when you get there.
Yeah, exactly. Right. I'd like to think that you could train Hal or Claude to be able to avoid that hesitant language by working on that, but I have not experimented with that. So I will get back to you and see if I can come up with some way to make it a little bit more confident as it talks about us in our inner weirdos. Now, so we're going through this process, and is there a end game to doing this? So we've got some good content. It sounds like we can use it to write some of the content on our pages. Are there other places that we should be focusing on, or is this kind of like laying the groundwork for the rest of our work?
I find that when it comes to messaging, you always need to start here with your about, you're kind of creating who you are based on your customers who and your customers why they most want you, with those dog whistles built in to both, as we talked about, both attract and repel people who are not a good fit for what it is that you offer, or who that you enjoy working with the most.
All right. Now, we've talked a little bit about AI and some of the shortcomings in language. You've actually said that AI might be making copy worse. So what do you mean by that? And how can we avoid falling into those traps?
Okay, so this is very interesting, Rich. They actually had a study that showed across entrepreneurs that in 30%, wait a minute, I'm going to get this wrong. Okay. In most of the cases, it made your copy worse, like 30% worse. And it was only like high level people that it made it better, like 10% better. So how do you know if your copy is becoming better or worse using AI? So that's why you really need to listen to people like Rich or what we're talking about today. Like if you don't realize, oh, you just think the robot's spitting out, this must be the way it should be. And you're not recognizing I aim to, I strive to is hurting your brand. That's when your copy gets worse.
Right. I think at the end of the day, obviously where we are today, at least, there needs to be a human intervention before that copy sees the light of day. I also remember reading a study recently, and I don't have the exact stats, but they were showing that AI, when they did a study with a group, AI would enhance the creativity of individuals. Like if you were struggling and you used AI for ideation, you ended up with more ideas than you came up with on your own versus the placebo group or the standard group. But when they looked at the group as a whole, the entire class, there were actually fewer ideas, which in my mind says that AI might be good for helping you come up with some ideas you wouldn't have come up with. But if everybody's using these tools, there's sort of like this homogenation of ideas. There's fewer ideas because you may not have come up with as many, but you would have come up with some that AI never would have come up with. So I think that we always need to make sure that we are injecting our humanness into this content, which is why I don't use AI for writing, but I use it straight up until when I start writing, and then I use it after I write to further enhance it. But I do think that whether we're artists, entrepreneurs, business leaders, marketers, we always have to be injecting our own creativity into these pieces of work.
That's a really great point. And just to circle back, like when it makes you more creative is, like I said, those prompts earlier, like why would somebody want what I'm offering? Because of my values. That will help you come up with some ideas you didn't think of. What will make you stand out from somebody else is we assume that your values and belief systems are different than your competitors.
So let's say that we've gone through this process, whether we're an artist, entrepreneur, marketer, brand strategist, what have you. We've got our website. We've got some emails in the can. We're posting to social media based on all these sort of things. At some point, we're going to end up face-to-face talking to people. And at that point, until we get Hal in our earpieces, we can't really use it like a Cicero de Bergerac kind of situation here. So how do you help artists talk to the art buyers in the real world? How do we stay on point? Any tips around that?
I do. Okay. So I talked a lot about this inside my book, Artpreneur, and I even gave some overcoming objections chart. And this works, doesn't matter if you're in the art world. And my book is really, it's not just for painters, it's for anybody who considers himself a creative business person. But the way that I structured this chart is not so that you're memorizing a bunch of scripts and acting like a robot, like acting like a chat GPT, but that you understand what's going through the mind of your customer when they present an objection to you, so that you can step into compassion and empathy to where your customer really is at any given point, because that will help you answer their objection the right way. Because a lot of us, we make it all about price. Because oftentimes when that is the objection, that's not their real objection. That's just their knee-jerk response.
Right. So it's always easier when you can kind of see an example in the real world. And I hate to put you on the spot, but do you have like any case studies or examples of people that you've worked with and taken them through this framework, this process, and a before and after story for us?
Absolutely. So Lynn Samus is an artist who was working with galleries, and in 2023, she had made $13,500 from gallery sales in all of 2023. And she read my book and came to me in January of 2024, which is great to have a case study like the whole year. She came to work with me, and she had made, by the end of December, over $90,000 in sales from her artwork. And that January, she even got an additional commission check for $20,000. So meaning by working with me, she added an additional $100,000 to her bottom line.
What was the shift for her? Like, what was she doing wrong before, and what did you help her get to that could make that kind of shift?
Okay. So in addition to all the messaging that we've already talked about, so I'm not going to retread that again, email marketing is one of the biggest needle movers for all of my clients. So many of them have been taught to rely on social media and Instagram. And I don't have to tell you, Rich, how that has been declining year over year over year. When I first went to write my book, Artpreneur, the average engagement rate on Instagram was 1%. By the time I went to edit that chapter, it had dropped to 0.6%. And just so people understand, that's 6 people out of 1,000. And now it has dropped to 0.4%. So if we compare that to social media, if you want 24 people to see your email, open your email, and we have a 24% open rate, you only need 100 email subscribers. Get that same effect on Instagram, you would need 6,000 followers to have 24 people engaging. So what's easier, 100 email subscribers or 6,000 Instagram followers? That's been the biggest needle mover for all of my clients, are the ones who lean into email marketing.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, there's base work to do. And that work, whether you're using an AI tool or not, is really about getting a clearer picture of who you are and the why of your audience. Once you've done that work, and AI can certainly facilitate that, simplify it, streamline it for you. You've got that content ready to go. It might even help you write rough drafts, at least of your emails. But the bottom line is, what you're saying is, then it's actually where the rubber hits the road. And email marketing, in your experience, has been one of the biggest movers of product, services, what have you, at least with the clients that you've been working with.
Absolutely. But I've seen it in my own business. So, I mean, like not just with the art world, but then when I did online classes, I thought, all I had to do was, I started doing online classes back when there was traction on Instagram. I thought, I just have to post a few times on Instagram. No, you have to do social media advertising and do a lead magnet and generate an email list. So
I'm curious, because you work with a lot of artists, and maybe I'm mistaken here. And I know you use a broad term for artist. It could be really anybody who does creative work, but for a lot of but painter is the first thing that comes to mind. A lot of artists are probably selling products that are one-offs. I might fall in love with an artist and buy multiple products, but very often I'm just going to buy one piece and that'll be it. I tend not to think of email marketing when it comes to those one-off things. So what are some of the tactics that you've seen work for building your list and then staying in front of that audience in a meaningful way after they've already purchased one product?
So for my audience, which is very high touch, the clients that I work with, for artists, one of the easiest ways to build your email list is just the invitation. Because so many artists, they're like saying, oh yeah, follow me on Instagram. And it's kind of like, well, good luck with that. So I tell them to make it personal. Hey, would you like to be invited to my next show? So you make it very personal. Now, for somebody who's not in that world, that might look differently. Hey, would you like an invitation to my webinar? Now, I scale this, and we had this conversation before we hit record. I do use Instagram to scale this by using ManyChat. So if you're interested in so-and-so, DM me this word. But the end game is always to get them onto your email list. And the same thing with my artists. Other things that have worked for visual artists are a free postcard print that gets mailed to them if they sign up for the email list, a free digital art buyer's guide. You can see how that would work for many different industries. That is one that is a digital giveaway that works very well for my artists and will work for many other different industries as well.
Awesome. Now, you have, before I ask to where we can find you online, I do know that you've got a chapter of your book that you want to give away for people who are listening. Where can people go, or how can they get that free chapter from you?
Yeah. So 2 reasons to get this is not just to get the free chapter, but you're going to love the way we've programmed our bot in ManyChat. So if you DM me the word believe, and my Instagram handle is Schulman Art, which is SCHULMANART. So DM me the word believe. If you don't want to do that, you can go to schulmanart.com/believe and enter your name and email the traditional way. But if you DM me the word believe, I think you'll like the process that we set up, and you may want to copy it yourself.
So there is lessons to be learned, even if you're not interested in the chapter, you're going to learn just by watching. And of course, if you missed any of that, we'll have those in the show notes. And now, if people just kind of want to check you out a little bit, Miriam, where can we send them online?
Okay. So if you like what I shared with you today, there's more of that over on my podcast, The Inspiration Place, which you'll find wherever you're listening to Agents of Change.
Awesome. And again, we'll have links to that. Miriam, this has been great. I really appreciate all your time. Give my best to Megan and Hal. And thanks so much for stopping by today.
Thank you for having me.
Lots of great content from Miriam today. And if you want to see a full transcript, or you want to see a blog post based on what Miriam said, or you want to see all the links she shared with us, just head on over to theagentsofchange.com/579 because we've got you covered. If you're looking for an action item today, go review your About page and use the who, what, and why framework that Miriam discussed so that you can craft copy that will attract your ideal customer. Remember to embrace your inner weirdo, because today's weirdos are tomorrow's agents of change.
Don't miss another thrilling episode of the Agents of Change podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform.